Greetings and welcome to the Strategic Advantage podcast. Today, we are taking a deep dive as to what should take place in a classroom and how effective are teachers in implementing what should take place. We're going to look at the Strategic Advantage instructional classroom observation instrument, and we have guests for our podcast today who will talk with us about the advantages, effectiveness as it relates to determining how well teachers are doing. We all know, or at least have heard, that we should inspect what we expect, and this instrument is going to be used for that purpose. Let's take a look at it and find out what our experts have to say.
Ever notice how some classrooms, you walk in and you can just like feel the energy. It's like
Yeah.
everyone's totally plugged in, engaged. I remember this one English class we were analyzing Shakespeare.
Wow.
But it felt exciting, like we were talking about a movie or something.
It's amazing how certain classrooms just click like that. And what's fascinating is there's actually a framework for kind of decoding that magic, understanding those specific things that make it come alive. And that's where this, get ready for it, Strategic Advantage Classroom Practices Observation Instrument comes into play.
Okay, strategic advantage sounds kind of intense.
Right.
Like we're about to like dissect a top secret mission or something.
Yeah.
But really, it's about breaking down good teaching, right? Like what actually works.
Exactly. Think of it as a common language for observing what's happening in a classroom, but also figuring out how to make it even better. Because, we all have opinions on good teaching, but this instrument actually gives us concrete criteria that's grounded in research.
So it's like having X-ray vision into what makes learning really tick.
Exactly.
Now, this instrument gets into some really specific teaching practices. One that jumped out at me was demonstration of the standard, which on the surface sounds kind of, straightforward.
Yeah, it sounds simple enough.
But what's it actually look like in action?
So it's about going beyond just covering the material, right? It's not just checking things off a list. Instead, imagine a teacher who not only breaks down exactly what students need to learn,
Okay.
but then also designs activities that let students actually use those skills in a real way.
So it's not just knowing the definition of a verb, but using verbs to write your own stories, right?
Exactly. And that's what demonstration of the standard is all about. Making sure there's a purpose behind everything the students do, that it's actively building towards them actually mastering that skill.
So no busy work allowed.
No busy work.
I love that. But how do we make sure students are truly engaging with the material? Not just going through the motions. And that's where close reading analysis comes in, right?
Absolutely. This practice is all about giving students the tools to really dig deep and analyze information. It's like, think of it like a detective analyzing a crime scene.
Okay.
They don't just glance around, right? They have a method, a way of finding those clues, connecting the dots. So close reading gives students that same framework, that deeper dive, whether it's a text or even a math problem, a piece of art.
It's about giving them that magnifying glass.
Yes.
That ability to zoom in and uncover the meaning that's maybe a little hidden.
I love that analogy.
I'm remembering back to my lit classes, debating like the symbolism in a poem, or what was the motivation behind this character's actions.
Exactly. And speaking of debate, this instrument also really emphasizes academic discourse.
Okay, so not just any old debate, right?
Right.
This is structured, it's evidence-based, there are rules to the game.
Exactly. It's about moving beyond those simple yes or no questions. And instead, you're fostering an environment where students can disagree respectfully,
Right.
where they can challenge each other's thinking, build on each other's ideas. But they're doing it using evidence from the text or from whatever they're studying.
Yeah.
Imagine a classroom that's buzzing, but it's buzzing with thoughtful arguments.
It's like those late-night discussions in the dorm rooms in college, but with a framework.
Yes, but with research to back it up.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And maybe a little less heat sometimes. So how does this instrument, though, make sure things stay respectful and productive? Because I know those debates can go off the rails.
It's about setting up clear expectations from the beginning. It's not just letting students talk freely, but teaching them how to have those respectful dialogues even when they disagree. So they learn to cite evidence, listen to each other actively, and actually build on each other's ideas.
So it's like learning the rules of the game, so to speak.
Yes, exactly.
So everyone can play confidently and effectively.
I love that. It's about creating a space where everyone feels safe to share.
That's powerful. Now, we've talked about analyzing text, having these really in-depth discussions, but I'm curious about how this instrument addresses those aha moments.
Yeah.
Those times when something really clicks for a student.
Those light bulb moments, right. And that's where making meaningful connections comes in.
Okay. So help us connect the dots here. How does a teacher make those light bulb moments happen more often?
Imagine a student, they're struggling with math, right? And then suddenly they see how percentages apply to their dream of opening a bakery someday.
Okay.
Or the history buff who connects the themes of a Shakespeare play to what they're seeing on the news.
So it transcends the textbook and becomes this living, breathing thing that's happening in the world. I'm starting to see a pattern here. All of these practices, they feel interconnected.
They are.
Like they're all pieces of a puzzle.
You're exactly right. They're not isolated at all. They fit together to make this much richer learning experience.
And this is what I think is so cool. It's not just about what the teacher's doing at the front of the room. It's about how the students are interacting.
Yes.
With each other, with the material.
This instrument highlights how important it is for students to have agency, that feeling of ownership and engagement.
Right.
And that's what fuels real learning.
It's like they're not just passively absorbing information. They're active in building their own understanding.
100%. And that leads us to another really key practice, higher order questioning, which means it's not just about finding the right answer,
Right.
but digging into the why, the how behind it.
So instead of knowing water boils at a certain temperature, it's understanding the science behind it.
Exactly. You got it. It's about pushing students to think critically, analyze that information, and then come to their own conclusions.
It's like that saying, give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. But in this case, we're teaching students to think for themselves, to be lifelong learners.
And those higher order thinking skills, those are in such high demand these days. There are even studies that show that when teachers use higher order questioning, their students become better problem solvers, which is so key for success in, today's world.
It's like we're giving them that mental toolkit to deal with all the information and challenges out there.
Exactly. And speaking of tools, we can't forget about technology.
Right. How does this instrument address, using technology to help students learn better?
That's where technology integration comes in. And again, it's not just about having the newest gadgets. It's about using tech strategically to actually make learning deeper and get kids more engaged.
Okay.
So remember close reading.
Yeah.
Imagine those students are using digital tools to work together in annotated text, or they're researching historical context in real time, or they're creating multimedia presentations.
So tech becomes this amazing toolbox.
Exactly. It's about making learning more interactive, more engaging, and just more meaningful.
It really is amazing to think about how much education has changed even since I was in school.
Oh, absolutely. And this instrument, this strategic advantage thing, it gives us such a valuable framework to navigate those changes and make sure that no matter what tools or technology we're using,
Yeah.
we don't lose sight of what really matters, which is deep, meaningful learning for all students.
It's like we've been looking at the blueprints for awesome teaching, but now I kind of want to see those blueprints become a real building, Can we get into some real-world examples here?
Absolutely. This instrument actually uses a rubric, a yes, partially, no rubric, to see how well a practice is happening in the classroom. So let's take, for example, academic discourse.
Yeah.
That lively debate we were talking
Let's
about.
get back to that. Paint us a picture. What's a yes look like in action?
Okay, so picture this. High school history class. They're tackling the Civil War, right? Now, in a yes scenario, you wouldn't just see kids spitting back dates and names. They're going at it, debating different sides of what caused the war, and they're backing it all up with primary source documents.
Oh, so it's like they're lawyers making their case, but instead of court, it's the classroom? That's cool.
Yes, it's a genuine exchange of ideas. They're challenging each other respectfully, building on what others are saying, and the teacher, they're like the guide on the side, right? They're shaping the conversation, but the students are the ones steering the ship.
I like that. Okay, now I'm curious about the partially. What's going on there? What should someone be picking up on?
So partially might mean you see students participating, but something's missing. Maybe their arguments don't have that strong evidence behind them. Or the discussion feels more like, I don't know, a bunch of separate statements than a real back and forth.
So they're dipping their toes in the water, but not ready to, like, jump in the deep end.
Exactly. The teacher might be doing too much of the talking, or asking leading questions instead of letting the students wrestle with the tougher parts themselves.
Okay, last one. Give us the no scenario. The one we all remember from our school days that makes us cringe a little.
All right, same history class, same Civil War topic, but instead of the debate, it's the teacher running the show, asking all these yes or no questions. Was the Civil War about slavery? Was Lincoln a good president? Like that.
Yeah, I could feel the energy draining out of that room. So much for deep thinking.
Right. The students become these passive vessels instead of active learners. Huge missed opportunity.
Wild how those little changes make such a difference. This rubric is seriously like a secret code for understanding what good teaching really means. And it's not just what you do, but how you do it.
That's what makes this instrument so valuable. It gives a common language, a way for educators to really look at their practice, get feedback, and make it even better, which means better learning for the students.
It's like we get a backstage pass to how great teaching works, all the little things that create those magic moments when learning clicks. So does this apply to different subjects? Like, could we see these same ideas at play in, say, math class?
Oh, for sure. Let's use close reading again, actually.
Wait, really? I thought that was for poems and stuff.
People don't always think about it with math, but it's just as important.
How does that even work with equations?
It's about changing your mindset. Instead of just solving to get the answer, you're trying to understand what's happening underneath. Like those students, close reading a word problem, they're dissecting the language, figuring out the important info, and then choosing the best way to find the answer.
So there's still detectives looking for clues, just different kind of clues.
Exactly. You're building that same critical thinking no matter the subject.
I'm loving how this connects everything. It's like we're not teaching math or history. We're teaching students how to think, period. How to learn anything.
That's the heart of it. That's the real power of this instrument. It's bigger than any one subject. It gives a plan for building those essential skills that help students way beyond the classroom.
It's like you're giving them this mental toolkit they can use their whole lives, no matter what they end up doing.
Yes. And speaking of lifelong learning, we can't forget about evidence-based writing.
So we've talked about analyzing, debating, connecting those big ideas. But where does writing fit in?
See, writing isn't just about showing what you know. It's a way to understand things better and really sharpen those critical thinking skills.
It's like when you have to write your thoughts down, it makes you think harder.
Yes. Evidence-based writing pushes this even further. Students have to use evidence, real proof, to support what they're saying, just like a lawyer or a scientist presenting research.
So you can't just have an opinion, you got to back it up.
That's it. And by doing this, it makes those critical thinking muscles even stronger. It helps with research, with communication, all these skills that are so necessary in a world that's drowning in information, right?
Like you're not just teaching them how to write a paper, you're teaching them how to think for themselves, build an argument, make themselves heard.
It's about giving them a voice and the tools to make that voice strong. And that's really the heart of what makes all of these teaching practices so impactful. It's not just about filling students up with information. It's about giving them the power to learn, to think critically, and become these really engaged people.
We're not just prepping them for a test. We're prepping them for, like, life.
Yeah.
And it's pretty amazing to see how all of these practices, you put them together, and it's like this whole amazing, effective teaching thing.
Right. It really is.
Yeah.
And it's important to remember this instrument, as awesome and complete as it is, it's not like a checklist you just go down.
Right.
It's supposed to get those conversations going for teachers to think about what they're doing and make it even better.
Like it's a compass.